Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is the first conference by Rental Scale Up in 2022, so I'm very glad to see you here. My name is Yuvika Wahi. I'm the head of content and community at Rental Scale Up. And today we are going to talk about bulletproofing your 2022 plans. Essentially, the idea for today is to share, we put together key insights and data for you to help you make better decisions as property managers in Europe in 2022 and help your business grow. So not only will we be sharing key data, but also actionable advice in terms of what you can do to keep up with these trends that we're sharing with you. So we are going to start with an introduction referring to what 2021 was like in Europe. And then we'll move on to talking about 2022 booking trends. And we'll be talking about how Q3 will be strong again, but booking patterns are not the same as 2021 or even 2019. The second topic we're going to talk about today is profitability under threat. So with inflation and labor shortages, property managers are facing new challenges or perhaps older challenges that are resurfacing. So we are going to talk about how you can meet those head on and how you can overcome these issues as well. And the third topic for today is guest communications at risk. So changes happening to email channels, and which is a channel that property managers use for guest communications primarily, and for marketing. There are changes happening to regulations around that as well. So what is it that you can do in order to continue leveraging these channels or perhaps do it in a different way? So today, joining us today are industry experts, starting with Andrew Martyn, who is the CEO of Your.Rentals. Your.Rentals is a short-term rental business management tool that is used by property managers globally. In Europe, it's trusted by property managers in hundreds of locations in multiple languages. So Andrew is here. He'll be sharing his expertise with us. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
Next up is Henry Bennett. He's the co-founder of propertycare.com and YourWelcome. YourWelcome helps property managers drive revenue by adding a service layer to their business through their tablet and their advanced service. And propertycare.com is their most recent offering, which is a housekeeping and maintenance platform that also makes guest management easier.
Hi, guys.
Hello, Henry.
Thank you.
And next up is Talia Lockard. She's the Director of Business Development at Rented, a vacation rental revenue management platform. Their automated rate tool, or ART, provides dynamic pricing with powerful tools in a easy-to-use platform. Hello, Talia.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, welcome. And last but obviously not the least is Thibault Masson. He's the CEO and founder of Rental Scale Up, and he's here to give you a little more context for the data that we're sharing today, and also moderating this conference for you. Thibault, please take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Yuvika, and thank you everybody for attending, watching here today, and thank you to Your.Rentals, Property Care, and Rented for also being speakers today, and we hope to provide you value and actionable insights. So let me see if I can still click on stuff. It's working. All right, my goal here is to give quick introduction with some charts and then just let our speakers speak. So for context, first context overall for our conference today, 2 slides quickly to look at last year, right? So last year in the world, so globally, right? Globally, last year, it was the best year ever for short-term rentals, especially for the summer, right? If you put together summer 2021, especially, for example, in the US and Europe together, it was the best year ever. But it was really true for the US. It was for the whole year, actually. Whereas in Europe, Europe was a different story, really, right? If you look at the data here shared by AirDNA, in March 2020, you see the bars going down, going negative. It means basically the demand turned negative in March 2020, of course, when the pandemic broke out, and the demand didn't turn positive, meaning like became stronger than in 2019, not before November of 2021, right? Whereas in the US, since January 2020, demand has been like record-breaking month after month. In Europe, it took until November overall to find some positive demand, like bigger than 2019. And that was, of course, right before Omicron struck the industry. So where are we standing now this year? Last point I wanted to make here is that even this situation getting better was really driven by, let's say, non-urban markets. Obviously, in Europe, top cities, the demand was still depressed, but it was coming back again until Omicron struck. So where are we standing now? So first topic, Yuvika told us there will be 3 topics today. First topic is 2022 booking trends. And I will on my side just show 2 graphs. Actually, giving some context about last year. What we saw last year, and you get a PDF after the session. This session, you get a PDF with these slides, right? I'm going quickly here, but what we just learned last year basically is that the markets that did really, really well, like Russia, France, the United Kingdom, and Germany, were markets where there was a very strong component of domestic demand that was able to balance out the local supply, right? Obviously, markets like Portugal also had domestic demand, but there was way more supply. So it means compared with 2019, there was a big drop in terms of overall demand because markets that depended on international markets didn't do well. So we'll talk about that. What was important also to see last year is that, again, basically starting May, June, cross-border travel in Europe, which is important to us Europeans, cross-border travel was starting to come back. The share of foreign travelers, so it's a green thing, green line, was trying to come back. And again, that was until Omicron struck. So let's see how this is going to fare this year. And to do that, we'll start with data from Your.Rentals, and Andrew, CEO of Your.Rentals, will take us through this data and I will debate.
Thanks, Thibault. It was a year last year that really had some promising signs, but didn't quite make it for the whole year, which I think all of us felt. So what we're trying to do to understand how does 2022 look, we're using a measure called booking pace. For those of you who don't know what it means, it's quite simple. So we take this point in time today, and we look at how many bookings we have for a certain period in the future, and then we can compare that to the same point in time in previous years. So one of the things that make us very optimistic about how 2022 might play out is the fact you can see on the chart there, the blue line at the top is actually the booking pace for summer check-ins coming in 2022 this year. And you can see that that is higher than the red line down the bottom, which was at the same point in time, middle of January in 2021. It was extremely flat. People were not booking their summer holidays in advance. And in fact, if you compare it to the middle of January 2020, which is right before COVID started to impact new bookings being created, then you can see that we're actually 1.3 times higher than we were even then. So this gives us quite a good optimism for the summer coming ahead. In order to understand why that might be, well, we think it's two things at play here. The first one is the confidence of guests to be making bookings in advance. And normally in January, we see a lot of bookings for the summer coming ahead. So the confidence of guests is definitely rebounded. A lot of people did travel in Europe last summer, so they know that it was possible, and in fact, it was not too different an experience than before. We've got the QR codes and the COVID passes that the EU launched right in time for summer last year, and people have gotten used to those and know how they work and are using them in their home countries as well as for travel as well. So that guest confidence, we're seeing a rebound to people booking their summer earlier. And then the second main factor driving this, and you'll see some data on the next slide in a second, is that the whole short-term rentals industry has really jumped on board and said, how can we make the risk for guests booking much lower in case they can't travel? So one thing that we've helped to implement is a wider spread of fully refundable cancellation policies. This means that the guest will have a full refund if they cancel a certain number of days before check-in. I think most of the property managers here have a love-hate relationship with this. So one of the things that we're asked quite a lot by our customers and property managers all around Europe is, should I be using fully refundable? They get cancelled at a higher rate. How should I weave that into my strategy? And this is one of the takeaways we'd like to give for this session. What you can see here is we've separated the bookings that we've seen over the last 6 months into 3 types of cancellation policy. Fully refundable at the top, partially refundable, usually a 50% refund upon cancellation, and then non-refundable, no refund after the booking's been confirmed. And you'll see that what's driving the bookings over the last 6 months and still here in January is fully refundable cancellation policy. It far outweighs bookings under any other policy. An interesting layer on that is how do cancellations look if you're offering fully refundable. So over the last 6 months, fully refundable bookings have been cancelled at a rate of 26% versus partially refundable 8% and non-refundable at 5%. And that does change quite a lot over time. So if you align it with Omicron check-ins around Christmas and New Year, there was a far higher cancellation rate because people were not going ahead with their travel plans, whereas in other times of the year, it's a lower rate. One very important thing is that many bookings are actually cancelled very shortly after they've been created. So if you look at the third column there, this is the percentage of cancellations made less than 3 days after the booking was created. You can basically take those out of the equation unless it's a very late check-in booking, giving an effective cancellation rate of 18% for fully refundable, 5 and 4 for the other 2 types of policies. Why is this important? Well, it should guide you in terms of how you set your pricing. So we allow our customers to set multiple offers for the same period. And for fully refundable, you should be pricing those somewhere between 20 to 30% higher than your normal rates so that you're covering that cancellation risk. And that is a strategy that we see is working quite well for our customers. Thibault, I think I'm kind of done with this. So if you've got any follow-ups, let's dig into it.
Yeah, exactly. And so what's interesting here, Andrew, and my cat agrees apparently, what's very interesting, Andrew, here is that this is very different from what I heard last week with Graham Donahue say. So I was interviewing Graham. He's the CEO of Sykes Holiday Rentals, which is basically the number 2 largest property management company in the UK. And what he was seeing at the time, he was seeing some bookings in Q1 happening, quite a few of them, but really like in near term, and not so much for summer yet. He was optimistic they would be happening, but they were not happening yet, which is different from what you just mentioned. So how do you explain the difference?
Yeah, and I mean, thanks for giving me a heads up. You're going to ask me that. So we have looked into the data. And of course, this is going to be different market by market. And that's one of the, the other things you need to consider. What am I seeing in my market? What sorts of restrictions are there, etc. So for Sykes, of course, they have a lot of inventory in the UK, of course, and it's in more leisure destinations, meaning that it's targeting a more domestic travel audience. And I agree with him. He will probably see quite a good summer this summer. But what I think we're seeing is where we have UK guests booking travel at the moment, they're typically booking for holidays abroad. So they're planning ahead with destinations like Spain, Greece, and Portugal being at the top of the list. We don't see much demand ourselves for UK guests booking UK destinations at this point. So I think that the data definitely aligns with what we're seeing as well.
Yeah, and And thank you, Andrew. I'm going to switch now to Talia from Rented, because pricing is very important as well. And a bridge I would have here is that also what Graham was saying, and we talked about that as well, is that they know they're going to sell out this summer in the UK, domestic destination wise. So they're not cheap at the moment, right? So pricing is very important depending on your market. So Talia, how do you see this? How about booking trends? What should people be doing in terms of pricing?
Absolutely. Can y'all hear me okay?
Perfect.
Good. Had computer issues, but I'm here. I'm excited to be here. So yeah, I mean, pricing is a really big part of this. And I'd like to piggyback off of something that Andrew was saying, right? You know, we've heard so much in the past 2 years of having flexible cancellation policies is how, you know, basically vacation rentals are going to continue to compete with hotels as the pandemic goes. I mean, we've obviously vacation rentals are doing amazing, whether or not US or EU, but we have to look at this on other perspectives as well, urban versus non-urban, and how is your strategy looking out? So one way of checking is the flexible cancellation policy working, as Andrew said, was looking at booking pace, right? So when you're looking at booking pace as the property manager, it gives you a great view on how the properties are doing. Well, what about the owner, right? So an owner who is looking on the other side of it and saying, ah, man, like we're not getting what we used to get. Everything's going down. My ADR is down or my occupancy is down. Are you actually giving those owners giving them right KPI to be checking? So one thing I'd really like to hone in on is RevPAR, revenue per available night, also whenever you're looking at your trends, because if you think you have a lot of cancellations, but your RevPAR, meaning the value of each night, is going up, and you can show that to your owners, they're able to see even more data points that can help them understand the cancellations in there. When it comes to pricing, I think that, you know, it's very important to just be aware of that strategy. I think we're seeing a lot of early bookings happening, right? And maybe we're seeing more of a trend coming up in the late bookings, but we're not seeing the middle bookings, right? It's either you're booking early for your holidays, for your family vacation, or I want to go on vacation, or I want to go on a spontaneous vacation in the next couple of weeks that are there. So when you look at it this way, always having your price set at a premium outside of your booking window, right, for those extended early bookings that people are making. And then making sure if the cancellation was to come up, that you also have a pricing strategy as soon as those gap nights and those last minute bookings are available, if that makes sense in there. So making sure, like, as soon as the cancellation happens, that you already have rates in your tool or your system that are going to recognize that you don't want the price to drop all the way, that you're still looking at the supply and demand, because just because it's a last minute booking, it could be a higher rate than the booking you got before, right? Depending on if the demand is in the area.
And adding to that, right, this is something we've seen a year earlier than in the US and in Europe, is that demand is also coming back to cities, to the big urban centers, right? So obviously the strategies are different from one place to another. And as we saw in the case of the UK, where Sykes has, let's say, non-urban properties, then there's a big chance they're going to sell out. So why lower your prices far in advance, to your point? Whereas maybe urban rentals will probably have to compete with, let's say, hotels, for example, and maybe more supply will come in, right? So what do you think for urban rentals? What would be the advice here, Talia?
I think with urban rentals, you know, for urban versus, you know, the other ones, I think that you do have to be a little bit more flexible, and not only your cancellation policy and your strategy, but in what will be your minimum nights or your minimum stays. That it may not be able to be the same as it was before, because business travel and urban travel is just coming back, right? So if somebody's coming back or somebody's going to an urban area, they may not be staying for a week if Omicron is high, right? They may stay for a couple days because they don't have as much exploring to do. So I would be, you know, very as flexible as you can. So allowing a lot of minimum stay logic. So filling gap nights in there, maybe a lower minimum night stay if your operations can handle it, or if the owner's okay with it, and really just always checking your health scores. So I would say, like our tool, you can check your 70, 30, and 90-day health scores. I would say this is something you should be looking at multiple times a week on an urban standpoint, right? Because urban's still last minute. So you don't know when the demand's going to just spike out of nowhere. So being a little bit more cautious in it, where rural you can kind of look like once a couple times a week if you're using dynamic pricing.
Thank you, Talia. What I'd like to share now is another topic, again, we have a Q&A in the end, right? If you have more questions. And by the way, I see people posting a few questions in the chat. Please do that so we can take them later. We'll start answering if we can. So perfect. Please do ask the questions in the chat if you want. Next topic is profitability, because here we talk about booking trends and we talk about differences between different markets as well. But another issue we have for property management companies this year is that bookings are coming back on the revenue side, the costs are rising. Let's take inflation, for example. That's inflation in Europe in December 2021. In December 2020, a year ago, inflation in the euro area was minus 0.3%, right? It was not inflation, basically it was negative. Whereas it was plus 5% in December 2021. And, you know, Poland, for example, inflation was at 8%. So it means inflation is there and it's something new. And maybe some of the newest property management companies have never known inflation, quite frankly. So how to handle that? The second thing we have to handle, even again in Europe, so that's, bear with me, this graph, what this graph means. This graph is the shortage in labor per sector in Europe, right? So the higher the bar, the biggest the shortage in labor in this sector. And no surprise, right? The biggest sector with the shortage with the biggest, I can't say that. The sector with the biggest shortage is hospitality, right? Accommodation and food. And think about that. That was at a time, that was in Q2 2021. And that's the most recent data we have from Eurostat, but that was a time where a lot of places were closed, right, in Q2 2021. So it means, again, we're at a time where, for example, cleaning standards are higher, but it's very hard to find a cleaner. So we'll talk about that through with our guests. And I think the first one, before we get into that topic, to think through it, is Talia, right? I think.
Absolutely. Here again. So the labor shortage and inflation is obviously a real thing. And I know as property managers, vendors, or even outside of our industry, right, we're all feeling it, no matter where you are with that. So one thing I wanted to really kind of touch on with this is how using automation in all different kind of areas can help you with the labor shortage, help you to basically reach operational excellence without having those operational hands, and really like it's the automation to help your team thrive, right? We're all burnout. We're going to continue to be burnout as markets are opening. So giving everyone the right tools. So one thing, thinking keyless entry, right? So automation, just as simple as that. Keyless entry, codes for guests to be able to get in the houses. How does that help with labor shortage? So think, you have a guest in the middle of the night who just drove, an hour, 3 hours to a remote destination, and you don't have anyone around and they just can't find the key. You maybe thought you put the key in a place that would be easy for them, but they can't find it. And then you would have to wake up a cleaning person, a maintenance person, or yourself to go drive and give them the key. With keyless entry, it's as simple as resetting the code, getting on a FaceTime and showing them how to actually get in there. So less having to get up and get your people to get out in the middle of the night, and also more guest satisfaction, right? Because if you have a guest has to wait outside in the cold for a few hours, which I have been that guest before, it's not that fun to do, and you're very excited to get inside. Other apps, property care, different apps that help you with your operational cleaning can easily tell you, say, hey, a cleaner's in the house. And as soon as the cleaner is done, they can go into the app, tell everything that's done. So it pings the property manager, the reservationist right away that the new guest can check in or the property is open. So using these different automation apps, and then also dynamic pricing, which is, the tool that we have in revenue management. And one thing I was explaining earlier is saying, like, hey, if you're going to do flexible cancellation policies, right, make sure that you're looking at your rates all the time to ensure that your cancellation rates are in there correctly. That's a lot of work if you don't have a qualified revenue manager or revenue management team, or you have one revenue manager managing 1,000 properties. It's hard to do all of those things. So using tools that are going to allow you to put in these rules that automatically do this as soon as a guest cancels, or automatically fills a gap as soon as your 5-night booking's available. Now you have a 4-night booking available. These are just basically tools to really empower your teams to make better decisions quicker and faster.
Yeah, enabling teams to make quicker decision faster is important, as you know, when the team can't be grown. And we talked about your point to labor shortages, and again, talking with Graham, for example, from Sykes, right, and was looking at his job openings. Not that I'm interested, but he has plenty of job openings. We're talking about that in the UK, right? And the labor shortage is not just the cleaners, it's all over the map, right? We're talking about labor shortage for revenue managers or marketers. So it is really, that's why automation is really important for all kind of things. And maybe I could ask the question now to Henry from YourWelcome and PropertyCare.com, because Henry, you've obviously yourself talked with property managers in the UK about this labor shortage and what they're doing to solve the issue.
No, absolutely. Thanks everyone for having us. Yeah, so I think it was quite interesting to pick up on a point earlier. I think not only have some property managers not experienced inflation, it's fair to say that a lot of underlying owners of the properties haven't either. They've never seen mortgages rates at sometimes above 1.5%. So I think the pressure will come twofold. One, from the owners suddenly becoming potentially more financial pressure upon their portfolio and therefore pushed upon the property managers. But I think the other thing that we're kind of seeing, and for those of us that possibly are a bit older, is we'll know that inflation is likely to hit your operations side of your business before your booking flow. Now, the reason why that is obvious is that, at a time when it's difficult to recruit cleaning staff, maintenance staff, and some of the lower paid side of your business, that has a real material impact on your business. And this is coming just at a time when, to be honest, I don't think guests ever ask what cleaning protocols are prior to booking a vacation rental, whereas now, obviously, in the COVID-19 world, your guests have pretty good eyes as well on what your cleaning protocols are. So I think there's a lot of pressure that's going to be put on property managers directly as a result of inflation, which isn't necessarily something that anyone that's set a property management company up or raised money to do so probably has ever put in their threats to their business. So it'd be interesting to see. And I think from our side, we've been running YourWelcome, which is a tablet for vacation rentals now for nearly 6 years. And we do a kind of annual survey of what priorities are for property managers leading into New Year's. And yeah, it's been quite interesting. You can imagine 2019, the world is a very different place. Things are going very well. The number one priority for all property managers, or the vast majority that responded, was property acquisition. They just wanted to grow. That's pretty inevitable. And then it was followed by guest experience and direct booking, but very much second and third to that. And then when we come into 2020, it was very much moved towards property retention, which again is no surprise, as most of us know that, particularly as the pandemic started to hit, really all you could focus on is trying to maintain the profitable parts of your portfolio. And then occupancy obviously became the second one as revenues were drying up. But what's really interesting, for the first time in 2021, we've never had a response of anyone mentioning cleaning staff. That's now number one. So cleaning staff recruitment is the number one priority of the response from YourWelcome. Second of that is property acquisition, which I think is quite a fairly good summary of how everyone's seeing this right now, is that we all know that with no cleaners, you have no property management business, you have no guests, and you've got awful reviews. So it's so key. And then the second thing that we're seeing that inflation is having a big hit on property managers is when we're onboarding PropertyCare.com clients, which is a task management tool, you typically have to onboard all of your team members. Now, what we're seeing is over 60% of these of property managers that have signed up have some level of external cleaning resource, which is quite interesting because traditionally property managers would either go, for everyone in-house, everyone outsourced, or maybe some emergency outsourced. But we're now seeing a very mixed model, which is, I think, something we're going to see going forwards, where I don't think you can no longer rely just on employing a set number of people. And broadly, we're seeing everyone managing the same amount, if not more, properties with the same amount or less cleaners, which puts huge pressure on your operations, which is a direct result of inflation, because everyone would like more cleaners given a choice. And then, I saw this firsthand. Myself and one of my colleagues was down in Cornwall, premium UK area, demoing PropertyCare.com, and everywhere you drove, you saw hotels and bars and restaurants with signs up saying, "We no longer open Mondays, Tuesdays, or Wednesdays," purely because they can't get the staff. And I think that's because I would imagine that cleaning resource are competing with bars for this temporary resource that is not there all year round for obvious reasons. And then, the last thing that we're seeing, excuse me, is like, Talia succinctly put before, is all, automation. There's always been, we all know, a huge disparity between what we call internally as Airbnb management companies. And by that, I mean, traditionally venture-backed businesses that have raised capital. They see their businesses very much as automating everything and outsourcing everything, as opposed to traditional VR companies. But really, within our discovery calls, talking to property managers everywhere, it's quite interesting because pretty much everyone has some level of email communication, automation, whether it's just a very top line or automated response. But we see very, very little cleaner automation in the markets which we're entering. So with propertycare.com, that's a completely new market. And then the last thing I was just going to say is that it's interesting that we're seeing one of the other things in automation, which I guess plays into what we're talking about as well, is that for the first time we're seeing automation of how they can grow their inventory. So they want that to play this automation into how they market and outreach to new owners. So I think that's going to become a key thing as well.
And it's a great, thank you, Henry. It's very clear, and I feel it's a great bridge. And we're talking about, obviously, in terms of marketing or outbound outreach to get more supply, more guests. Email, for example, is very important. And it's a great segue to a topic that I think you know a lot about, but let me share just like 2 slides again to share this last topic, which is the drastic change that's threatening a lot of property managers. They may not know that. I know you actually taught me a few things about this. So guest communications are at risk. So I don't want to be over dramatic, but we've known it's been already messy already to try to make sense of messages you get through the booking app, the Airbnb and your channel manager and direct and the rest. But here it's something different. And again, you will be explaining a lot about this. There's been changes in the way Apple, for example, and now is enabling its users to basically stop tracking or make let's say it's harder to for people tracking emails to have a clear idea of open rates. So in click rates, basically the rates, and which is endangering basically communications to guests and also in terms of marketing. And so thank you, Henry, for actually explaining to us what I really mean by this. What's the impact of what Apple did? And is it really important? Should we care as property managers?
Yeah, sadly, it will impact you. You should definitely care, I think, is a summary. But I think broadly, there's sort of 4 types of guest communications, and they differ as you go through the guest journey. So there's obviously email, which everyone uses here, I would suspect, SMS, WhatsApp, and also the OTA direct messaging apps, as we just covered. And really, when you're in, if you look at a guest journey, when we started YourWelcome, which is obviously a physical tablet in property, one of the things that we identified very quickly is that email communication is really effective pre-arrival, because people are excited about their holiday, they're worried about getting into the property, how the property is going to work. So they open all your emails, you look at them. Once they get into property, email is a poor form of communication to try and upsell or to communicate with your guests, as they generally aren't going to be checking their emails. So SMS or some sort of physical tablet is a lot more effective. But one of the challenges which we are all going to face, and whether you're a property manager or a tech supplier in any industry or tech supplier to the property management companies, is that Apple introduced their mail privacy protection, and anyone that's updated their iPhone or Apple device would have had a pop-up that turned up, and the majority of people are pressing it, which essentially means that it's going to reduce the ability for emails to land in people's inboxes that you don't know, and also you won't have any insight into the open rates. So I think a survey in Adweek, which is a British publication tracking marketing emails, I think revealed that just over 50% of Apple users are now obscuring open rates and affecting their spam rates. So what does that mean for you guys? Well, one of the slight challenges that we all face is that there's always been ambiguity in our industry about who owns the guest. So the guest booked through the OTA. So OTAs have always said that they own the guest, and that's been a topic I'm sure you've discussed before at some point. And then there's the property managers, and then there's the tech companies that provide the communications on behalf of the property managers. So what does that mean? That basically means that the guest is potentially going to get an email from someone they don't know. And what that could mean going forwards, particularly with Apple's changing with this, is that your guest might not see it, which is a material problem for property managers. As we know, if you're sending door codes or key information, you need your guests to be seeing that. And I think that one of the things that we're seeing from this is that you know, from discovery calls from propertycare.com is, particularly in Europe, people really want to start using WhatsApp because, one, it's got the red symbol on there, two, pretty much everyone has it on their phone, and there's a very quick response rate. And if you look at America, WhatsApp's not so popular, SMS is the one to use. But unfortunately, it's not as clear as just saying move all your comms to WhatsApp or to SMS, because both of these also come with challenges as well. And the reason why we're going to go into this a little bit is propertycare.com is very focused on providing communications to your guests as well through these mediums. So the challenge with WhatsApp is, most of you will know, it's owned by Facebook. Facebook are very protective over WhatsApp, and they don't want it to become a marketing channel because people will switch off. So one of the things that has to happen if you're going to start communicating via WhatsApp, apart from ad hoc just texting responses, but more on the automation side, is you need all your messages pre-approved by Facebook. So essentially what you do is you need to have a number of key messages that are outlined a response to a booking inquiry, or how you're going to send your door code, or how you're going to try and upsell a late checkout. All those need to be pre-approved before you start sending on WhatsApp. Otherwise, you've got chances of being banned from the platform, which obviously would have a material impact going forward. This, by the way, is only if you're automating, not if you're just sending WhatsApp just with someone on their phone in the office. But as anyone knows, as they scale a business, that's not a scalable way of communicating with guests. And then the same is true on SMS. So, you know, SMS is one of these things where there's a lot of automation. You can send out marketing emails. I'm sure SMSs. I'm sure all of us have had those in our phones. But one of the things that's coming in the US is that they're trying to regulate the automation of emails from computer to people's handsets. And this is called application to person 10-digit code, which is a catchy name, but essentially it means computer to phone. And this regulation is going to have a huge impact in the US on how property managers communicate. And it is inevitable that it will come over here as well. So none of this is necessary reason to be concerned imminently, but I think it's something you should also be considering when you're talking to PMSs or third-party suppliers about what protocols they're using and how much they know about this space, if they're going to be sending WhatsApp, email automation, or SMS on your behalf. So yes, that's kind of a very quick summary of where we're going. I think one of the things I would recommend, if you do use third-party suppliers, whether it is your PMS or a company like propertycare.com, try and make sure that you as the property manager are actually the SMS provider, i.e. you're signing up with the end company that is delivering those emails, as opposed to doing it as part of everyone that a company is sending. Because if one person in that, so say for example, a tech company is sending out SMSs for hundreds of property managers, if there's one bad actor that's sending out marketing emails when SMSs when they shouldn't, you could also get banned. So just look into how people are sending SMSs on your behalf.
That's really great advice for guest communications. As we said as well, right? It's also threatening email marketing data in the sense that, so to summarize quickly, if I get it right, but what's happening, actually, your open rates may be higher than ever. And you may think it's great, but actually what happens basically, Apple preloads now. It's like Apple preloads the data from each email. It's like as if it had been opened in a lot of cases. So they will count as open. So you think, oh, my open rate is going up. Actually, people didn't open. So if you have follow-up sequence, if you're emailing, in a newsletter, for example, or even if in my case, right, sometimes when I write into guests, I have MailChimp, I have an email sequence where if they did not open the email, we ask them to give me the time they arrive at the airport. I'll send them things. These follow-up sequences will not work anymore because the systems, your system will think the email was open. It actually was not, just because of these new settings of Apple. So that's just a summary how, again, it may be affecting a lot of metrics that you've been relying on. And I think Apple is like 40% of the people, it's like 40% of people are using Apple to read emails, right? Something like this, if I'm not mistaken. So it's big. Talia or Andrew, do you have on that part in terms of guest communications, what to do? What's your take on it?
Yep, just quickly first, I mean, thanks Henry for bringing up such a interesting topic, I think, and challenging. But I mean, the main thing here, I think, is that, you want to be talking to your guests through the channels that they prefer. Everybody prefers different channels. And at different times, as Henry pointed out, the email may be switched off once they've checked in. So that becomes quite a complex technical challenge to be able to distribute and receive messages on different channels like WhatsApp or SMS or email, and have the replies come back into somewhere where you can see them all in one place. Something we're working quite hard on at Your.Rentals, and it's a little bit like building a telecom company inside the company, because it's technically very challenging, a lot of use cases, and also changes like Henry's talking about that are coming up as well. So probably something you want to have a good supplier, tech vendor, whether it's a PMS or somebody else, to help navigate that.
Thank you, Andrew. Talia, anything else to add on the guest communication side?
Sure, I definitely think Andrew and Henry really kind of, nailed down on exactly, what's happening and what you can do on the tech side. What I would like to offer is, kind of thinking outside of the tech. Yeah, why automation and all this stuff is going to make it easier for you to do communications and be diverse in your communications. Also realizing there's this level of, making sure the guest knows your brand, picking up the phone if we really have a big problem with them answering, and knowing, like, now that the pandemic, we've gone through it, I know we're at this point where no one wants to pick up the phone. We don't think we want to pick up the phone because we want to do everything faster by automating it and getting it to our guests. But also, everyone has been in their house at the same time, getting all these same messages, all these same automated emails over and over again. It's surprising how much I've noticed a lot more people want to build that on the phone relationship with you and remember you. So don't be afraid to have that communication. Now, that goes back to inflation, right? If you have a labor shortage, who's going to be calling everybody and doing all that? And, that my last point there would be, thinking outside the box with this inflation. And, maybe you may not have somebody on your staff right now who wants to call and check in with all your reservationists, but if you went somewhere and you saw an amazing server who gave you the best hospitality experience at a restaurant that night, maybe that's a good person that would make some calls for you, right? Thinking outside the box on who could help you do these things that automation may not be able to get you to, in terms of whether or not they're not answering or more rules and regulations.
Thank you, Talia. So in a nutshell, we talked today about the trends, what's happening, and not just in terms of booking trends, right? There's like this changing happening to us in terms of profitability, or even communication channels. So you'll be getting, Yuvika will tell us at the end what you'll be getting out of this, but I think right now we can already answer a few questions. And I see in the chat, there was actually a question, and Andrew, thanks for replying to this. I think you did, but I'm going to ask the question aloud, and you can answer the question as well. So the question, I think, was for Marla, and she was asking, is there any way that hosts can purchase cancellation insurance, and would it cover COVID?
It's a really good question, Marla, and I've been asked it so many times the last 18 months. We looked really in depth into. We had talks with a lot of insurance underwriters, some specialize in vacation rentals, others more larger companies. And basically it came to the same point every time, that the risk is so uncertain that they could not bring a product into the insurance market that would be priced where anyone would want to buy it. So it's the challenge was insurmountable, you could say. So that's kind of when we started to dig into, well, we have this thing called cancellation policies. Let the guests pay for the insurance of having their money back or not. That was basically where we came to in our thinking. So I know it's maybe not the strategy that everyone likes to adhere to, but we prefer or recommend for our property managers to set prices at all three levels of cancellation. So your regular, partially refundable policy, where the guest will have 50% refund if they cancel, that you charge your normal rates for a free cancellation, then you mark up even 30%. I mean, people are paying this, guests are happy to have the option and they're prepared to pay for it. You can see by the conversion rate on those policies is so much higher than anything else right now. And then for non-refundable as well, we see that as a great opportunity to lock in revenue at a slight discount to your normal rates. And when you're able to present the guests with 2 or 3 options on many of the channels now, they will make the choice and decide whether they want to pay extra for the flexible policy that gives them a full refund. What we try to do is share the data so you can make good decisions about how you should price that.
And thank you, Andrew. And I can see in the chat that Daniela and Mark had also a suggestion about this. And Mark, friend from Brentivo actually is here, saying that in terms of COVID coverage, they are discussing with protectgroup.com, who offers some form of coverage integrated solutions. Some things exist. And Daniela, who's got properties in Marbella, says that she's maybe more addressing the confidence by doing, she's offering 30% deposit by 31st of March 2021 with free change of dates up until 3 days before arrival for health reasons and balance on arrival. So again, what I like in this approach as well from Daniela is thinking, which I also have in my mind, is like, maybe right now we are in the middle of this craziness, and maybe after that, after Q1, we can be stricter about this. So we give convenience now, and if people are seeing these crazy times in Q1, we can do this, but still make sure to be stricter. And to that, I will address something Yuvika noticed also today, and she was telling me earlier that Airbnb, for example, as you may know, Airbnb, Booking.com, and all the others have changed their cancellation policies, their extenuating circumstances in 2020. 2020, they did this after COVID, and COVID is not a reason anymore to get a cancellation. For Airbnb, it's only a reason if you're actually sick. Right? It's just if there's travel restrictions, that doesn't count. And yet, Airbnb has just issued has a new system now. Just issued that they're going to give you travel credit if you can't travel because of Omicron. Why? Because there's been a wave of cancellations of people not sure whether they want to book. So, but Airbnb can't force us property managers and owners anymore. They can't force us to massively cancel things. So what they have to do, they're offering to travelers travel credits if they have to cancel. So it is interesting, but to me, they're only doing this because they think it's temporary. They think this Omicron thing will end, so they have this temporary solution. But let's see what it is. Any other question we have on the topic, or any other reflections from our speakers, maybe?
Thibault, the credits from Airbnb, is that for any other property or the same property or same host?
Obviously, no TA would do this for their platform, not for their very host.
Yeah, and that's exactly one of the pushbacks we got to that. So we actually provide the same feature, works on any OTA channel we can support, but only for the same property manager's property for rebooking.
Yeah, I think also the other thing to add as well is that particularly the UK government was very guilty of this, is that they decided quite early on not to bail out the airlines, but in return, what they didn't do is go after them for refunds when planes were cancelled. So one of the things that's done is no fault of property managers, but I think it's also a consumer confidence crisis with believing that an airline is going to give your money back. Now, obviously there's reasons why the government did that, but I think that the knock-on effect of that is going to be that people will book their flights later as well, because they have no confidence that these bigger airlines will hold on to their money for months and months and months and try and give them a credit that somewhere they don't want to go in winter, which I think is also going to be a challenge going forward as well.
Anything else we have in terms of trends this year? So we talk about this. So I think that's a point we had as well, and I'm going to close on that one. So I shared at the beginning this whole cross-border travel. So we also guessing, right, that I think Andrew touched upon that with the people. A lot of people did travel across borders. It was a bit complicated. There was a lot of back and forth. We did cross across last summer across borders. Numbers were going up. The QR code now in Europe is again, it's no small feat, right? 27 countries getting together. I think even Switzerland, I think UK is aligned or not, I'm never sure, but I think maybe they're aligned. But at least this thing, they managed to get at least 27 countries to agree on a format for a QR code. It's working, and now everybody has it on their phone, right? So hopefully we can hope that these very strong bookings will. Yes, last year bookings were soft until June. Stays were soft until June, but stays probably will be happening earlier around Easter, for example. So Easter should be good, right? Is it also what you think that, because we talked a lot about right now, we talked a lot about summer, and as Talia was saying, this in between, this soft belly. But I think Easter looks pretty good, no? Or does anybody have like trends or data or some anecdotal evidence around this, or people watching? Do you have any thing you can share around your Easter data?
I think I have something to share here. I'm so excited. Well, I think the attitude towards COVID is changing in Europe overall. Because, for example, in Spain, there's a demand to have COVID be treated as endemic, so as the flu, basically. What that would mean is that would change the rules around quarantine, etc., and obviously that'll impact travel, and it will impact booking windows as well. So that you can already tell that people are moving to make it, they're kind of downgrading it in terms of what its impact is. You know, they're already demanding that in Europe. In Spain, it's actually a movement right now. So that's something to keep an eye on as well, because that's going to change how people travel as well.
Well, thank you. You go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to add to that. You know, I am in the US, but that was kind of what I was going to like add to that, is like what we've seen in the US. And obviously it's was a lot easier early on for us to travel and stuff in the US, is that, you know, as I'm talking to everyone in the past couple months and really like into the industry, like everyone last year who was very dead set on staying in the US and going to drive to market locations, they don't want to do that. Like everyone, like a lot of the US people I talk to now, like they are planning their European get out of US vacation this year. And the thought of even saying Omicron and COVID are not coming out of people's mouths, because they're like, oh, this is here, right? But they're downgrading it, and they're still thinking of their future plans and how to change it from what it's been the past 2 years.
It's a fair point as well for people who depend on the overseas market, like the US. Obviously, as we talked about, right, the attitude, and again, the baby agrees with me, the attitude, the attitude towards COVID also is bit different, obviously, in Europe. I think we talked about this with Henry when preparing this, is that in Europe, you have to repeat a lot about protocols, COVID-19 protocols, right? Guest communications are very important. Within the US, it's like, I think Henry was telling me, like, his teams are like, well, you guys in Europe are still talking about COVID?
Yeah. I mean, it's been for us as a company, because we have offices both in London and also in Florida. It's been a recurring theme of the pandemic, where London, who's had probably one of the worst COVID cases, and also, you know, restrictions alongside Europe, where completely polar opposite in Florida. Seemingly, there's been virtually no restrictions. I'm not sure about the cases, but yeah, it's been interesting running a tech company that runs between both sides, where one seemingly has not interest, but it's not the top priority, where the other side, no one talks about anything else other than COVID. It's interesting.
It is. And that's, you know, exactly right. Exactly when you're saying London versus Florida, like our company, we're all virtual. We have Bermuda, you know, we have some in EU, you know, all over, and even different parts of the country, the West Coast versus the East Coast of the US in general. I mean, it is very different in everywhere that we're looking, right, and juggling that.
All right. Thank you so much for your time every day. Yuvika, please take it away, because I think there's like things that people will be getting after this call. So can you take us through this, please?
Will do. Thank you, Thibault. And thank you, everybody else, for your insights, for working together with us on this. And thank you, everyone, for joining us and attending. Please keep an eye out in the coming week for an email from us with the session recording of this conference, so you can watch it later, even perhaps share it with your friends who you think this might interest. Also, in that email, you can expect a report, an exclusive report that we're creating that has all the data that we share today in the report, as well as the main talking points from today and main insights. So you will have that handy. And finally, you will also get access to exclusive discounts and offers from all our partners today, from Your.Rentals, from propertycare.com, from Rented. So keep an eye out for that, so you can make better decisions for your business.
All right, that's it. Well, okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Yuvika, for organizing. Andrew, Henry, Talia, for being here today.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks, Thibault.
Bye, everyone.
See you later.